Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, Peter George.
Where do you look to find great storytellers? As a speaker, it wouldn't be unusual for you to look at other speakers, those who have become very adept at the art. But have you looked to actors? Think about it. Actors are in stories, and how they deliver every word has an effect on how that story is consumed and interpreted. With us today is Kerri Garbis, a professional actress since childhood. Kerri began her studies in voice and theater at the Baltimore School for the Arts before earning her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in musical theater from Syracuse University. As the CEO of Ovation, a communication skills training firm, Kerri has trained hundreds of business professionals on presentation skills, storytelling, etiquette, and emotional intelligence. Here's my chat with Kerri Garbis. Hi, Kerri. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Peter.
Kerri, I know you suggest that we look to actors for advice when it comes to getting better at delivering presentations. Why is that?
You mean besides the fact that I'm a professional actor and have been since I was a kid? You mean other than that?
Well, that might have a little to do with it.
Fair. Totally fair. I believe that actors have important things to say to people getting ready for presentations. All of it stems back to what feels like 300 years ago at this point, but it wasn't quite that long, that a friend of mine, I was in New York and a friend of mine called and said that he was in a nearby hotel and he needed me to come down and help him find the best place to stand in the ballroom because he was about to give a presentation. And he was like, Kerri, you're an actor, you know where to stand. And I thought, yeah, okay, sure. I think I do. Sure. So I go down to the hotel, I meet him there, and sure enough, it was a very poorly set up ballroom. But I said, okay, let's try to find where the brightest part is. All right, let's start here. Maybe you could move here. Let's throw in a story. Let's do something. And we rehearsed a little bit. And he said, great. Now, if you go hang out in the green room, which was really just a conference room at the hotel, I will take you out to dinner after I'm done with my presentation. And I was like, yes, I'm an actor. And so a free meal at any point, I mean, to this day, you offer me a free meal, I'm going to say yes. So I go in the green room and hang out with the other gentlemen that were waiting to give their presentations. It was like a financial annual meeting type situation. And in that room, they're each preparing, and I use the term very loosely, for their presentation. And one guy was kind of like stumbling through the room, muttering through as fast as he can. And another guy is sitting at the table, sort of moaning and looking up like, and so I think that was some sort of preparation technique. But there was also, most shockingly, a guy in the corner throwing up into a trash can. And nobody cared. And so I go over to the guy throwing up and I'm like rubbing his back, right? Just doing a motherly thing. I wasn't a mother at the time. I'm like, sir, is everything okay? What, can I get you some water or something? And he turns around and he's like, no, I'm fine. This is what I do before every presentation. And I was like, okay, that's gross. And what? And all the other guys, and it was all men, and all the other men in the room said, yeah, this is what he does before every presentation. And which blew my mind. And so I started asking each of them, okay, how did you get ready for today? What did you do to prepare to present to this pretty high stakes group? And everything that they were telling me that they did was counterproductive rather, to what I knew to be best practices for preparation and getting in the most confident mindset and getting to a place where your content is in your muscle memory to deliver. It was everything opposite of what I had told has to be true and put into best practice as an actor. And that was kind of the day I thought, like, I wonder if actors have good things to say to business professionals about presentations.
Quite a story.
Thank you.
You think the guy would actually head to the bathroom at that point as opposed to just staying in the green room?
Yeah, I don't think the plant was very happy. He was hitting the trash can and the plant in the corner. So I try not to think about that part too much.
So what advantages does storytelling give speakers and their audiences?
Storytelling is this wonderful, powerful tool that everybody has, anybody can do, anybody can use. And most of us are using it and not even in a really powerful way and not even aware of it. It is the easiest way to emotionally connect with your audience because it makes an emotional connection, and it immediately makes your content more memorable if you're telling it in the form of a story, and it makes your life easier. It's so easy to tell a story versus I'm going to run through these 10 points of data, or I'm going to give you a list of things that you may not care about. But if you put it in the context or the structure of a story, much more interesting, much more to your benefit, and additionally benefits of the audience as well.
Now, when my listeners are giving presentations, is there one time better than another to tell a story?
I wholeheartedly believe that there are very few inappropriate times to tell a story. Perhaps not in the middle of a medical emergency is not the best time to be like, I'm going to do some CPR, but while I'm doing it, let me take you back to the 80s, right? Not the best time. I'd say, yeah, tell stories almost any time. I find them, and a big practice that we teach at my firm is telling them right at the start of a presentation to grab the attention of the audience. That's a kind of number one no-brainer in my opinion.
Great technique.
Yes. And then my other kind of like hard hitter is at the end. If you really want to hit a point home and leave sort of a mic drop moment with your audience, tell a story at the end as well. They're great for transitions. They're great for getting from one idea to another. They're great as a mood shifter. If something goes wrong in your presentation, if you've got a heckler in the audience, if your tech goes down or you're using a different system to project so it looks like you made your slides when you were drunk the night before, telling a story to gain back the attention of the audience and clear the air and regain your confidence and credibility, tell a story.
There's telling stories, and then there's telling stories that support your point. What are the keys to telling a story that truly resonates with your audience and your message?
You're right. You can just tell a story, right? As a mood shifter, I'm going to tell this story about how I thought I was being stalked by Derek Jeter once. Completely true story. I'll save that for later if you want, Peter. Look, I piqued your interest. He nodded his head. You tilted your head.
As a Yankee fan, I'm very interested in that.
I know. See, I know my audience. You have to know your audience, right? Know your audience.
Know your audience.
Know what stories they want to hear. And sometimes with good storytelling, less is more, meaning we don't have to say and explain every single solitary detail. I didn't tell you what year it was when my friend from high school called. I didn't even tell you, I don't think in this version, what his name was or what hotel I went to or what time of year it was or the company he worked for or what I was wearing or anything. And sometimes less is more because it ignites the brain of the listener to kind of fill in the blank. So give them enough to get them in the story with you versus too much of showing them the story on a screen. And if we want to hit it hard, the reason I'm sharing this story with you is, or the point of this story is, I share this all to say, etc.
When we were little kids, when we watched Aesop's Fables or anything like that on a Saturday afternoon, if you're old enough for that, back in my day with Looney Tunes and Rocky and Bullwinkle, I think it was Rocky and Bullwinkle's show had Aesop's Fables. And there was always the moral to the story.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that speakers will often forget is that either they assume the audience is going to get the moral of the story, the point of the story, or they don't even think about sharing that.
Right.
And I often suggest to people that you say the point is, or the moral is, so they're not doing the mental gymnastics or missing it completely. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a huge fan of it's that resolution piece of the story that sometimes gets left. And while, yes, we want to assume our audiences are smart and they're with us and they'll get it, thus we don't have to bowl them over with like a ton of details. We want to still get them to where we want to get them. So sharing, or you're essentially, it's sharing the why you're telling the story in the first place. And some stories are just for fun, and some stories are just mood shifters or attention grabbers. Other stories can really get to here's why we need, here's the end of the fable. Here's the reason why we share the story. Absolutely.
A lot of speakers say, hey, I just don't have stories. Yet I believe everybody has stories. Where's the best place that speakers can find ideas for their stories?
Life experience. I have so many people that we work with in either a storytelling workshop or we're getting speakers ready for an event, that they'll say, but I don't have anything. And we'll ask something like, are you at least 25 years old? And typically they're not even close to that. They're typically much older, but they're meaning that we're asking them their age, because even if you're 3, right, you have life experience, you have things that have happened. Nobody has lived in such a bubble that they have not experienced something unique to them. And we can absolutely find something that may not feel like it makes sense to the topic, but you can find that connection. So start with you. I remember years and years ago when I first started Ovation, and I personally was doing a lot of the training. Now I've got 23 fantastic professional actor trainers who do the training. We were getting some speakers at a tech conference ready for their conference. And this gentleman was really struggling trying to find an opening story. And his topic was taking 2 different software programs and how his code brought them together to work well together. And he's like, this is really data heavy. This is a level whatever in tech talk. And nobody wants to hear a story. And I don't have any stories. And I said, sure you do. Absolutely. And trust me, people, if this is level 10 tech talk, people want to hear a human emotional story first. And so I said, okay, I'm not technical really at all. So I was like, all right, so what's happening? He's like, well, this software does one thing, this one does the other. They're very different softwares. I got them to work together. But he said, but there were a lot of struggles along the way, and there were a lot of missteps. And I was like, there's nothing really in your life that ever you started with one thing, or you were thinking one way, got together with someone else and they thought a very different way. You guys figured out how to work it together. And he was like, oh, you mean when I brought my wife home from India to the States? And I was like, yes. And so he talked about the whole adventure of marrying a woman he didn't know very well, bringing her to the States. And it was a beautiful analogous story of, just like this, there were all these missteps, and voila, this is what I did with these softwares.
Sometimes it is difficult to see the forest for the trees. I have stories that I tell quite often, but if I'm asked to speak about a topic I might not speak about that often, if I find myself troubled for a story, I just go ask my wife and I say, I need a story that I've told you somewhere over our life together where this happened. And she'll say, oh, you had this. And she has all these memories of things I've said. And I'm like, oh yeah, I would never have thought of that.
Professionally, just ask your wife anything, first of all. Second of all, yes, ask a partner, ask somebody you talk to, and they'll help you with that. Because you're right, sometimes it's hard to step back enough to realize.
Then it's the blinding flash of the obvious, like, oh God, how could I not have thought of that?
Right.
What do you think tells the best stories? Do you think some people are better than others?
I think that, like athletes, there are people that are better with those skills than others. I do think storytelling can come easier to some people than others. I think that sometimes it's a little misguided. I have people in my personal life, my mother-in-law, who considers herself a very gifted storyteller, and sometimes they're a little long and painful. So I do believe it's a really easily learned and implementable skill, because there's easy guidelines, easy structure to follow. And once you're able to see that, oh, right, okay, here are the elements I need. Okay, or even if I have this long drawn out story, if I'm able to put it in this structure, it's going to be much more palatable and digestible for my audience.
What do you think's the key? What do you think, if there's one key about storytelling that we might leave out quite often, what do you think that is?
Other than the resolution, the ending, the why that we talked about, it's the inciting incident. It's the thing that happens that makes this a story. I will hear a lot of stories in my personal life and my professional life, and it's like that front-loaded, detail, heavy-weighted setup of, well, I was walking down the street and I had these new sneakers on and I didn't really like them. They weren't really comfortable and my socks weren't great. And the weather, it was kind of cool. So I went out, but I had to go back because I needed a heavier jacket. And then I thought, like, do I wear the scarf? Do I not wear the scarf? Right. And we get this whole thing when really it could just be, I was walking down the street and then I saw Derek Jeter again. Now we have a story. Now start the story.
That's good. What else can we stop doing in terms of storytelling during our presentations? So keep it concise. Don't overload it at the beginning. What else?
Shorter is typically better, as long as we have all the elements, for sure. And if I had my presentation wish, I would never hear this again. I'm going to share with you a story about the time I fill in the blank. Or I'm going to share a story about, or, hey, here's a good story to share with you, right? We should stop announcing that we're going to tell a story and just tell the story. Launch into it. Don't tell us you're going to tell the story. Tell the story. That's all you need.
If you look at movies, which are the great storytellers, they get into it.
Yeah.
They don't say although back in the 30s and 40s, they did. Back in the day of, especially if it took place like medieval time or whatever, back in this date, and they went on to preface it. I was like, no, just get into the story.
Yes, absolutely. The audience will follow.
Yeah. And I often thought the movies that did that, and I love old movies, the movies that did that were the movies that didn't know how to develop it quickly at the beginning. So they just told you.
Right.
And it's like, no, just start the movie.
Yes.
And if you do it right, we'll be right into it. Just tell us the story.
Just tell the story.
Otherwise, I think you're also defeating the purpose of, one, getting us engaged, but two, a lot of times they reveal the result. I'm going to tell you a story about this that happened, and then this is what happened in the end. It's like, then why tell us the story now?
Right. Let me tell you a story about the time I almost died. Okay. Great. I'm not interested now.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe I'll be half interested, but
it's like a friend saying, have you seen this movie? This is what happens. Well, now you don't have to go see the movie.
Right, exactly.
You have no care about seeing the movie.
Exactly.
Well, Kerri, you provided a lot of great content about storytelling and using actors' advice about storytelling and the like. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you and the services you provide?
Thank you. I am easily stalkable and found on LinkedIn and Facebook at Kerri Garbis, KerriGarbis. My company is Ovation. We're a communication skills training firm specializing in professional presence and speaker development. You can find us at getovation.com.
Kerri, thanks so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate that you took time to be with us.
You are very welcome. Thanks for listening to me.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tune in Monday when you'll hear another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George, and again Thursday for your next episode of Quick Bites, public speaking tips and techniques you can digest in 5 minutes or less. Until next time, remember, when it comes to speaking in public, you've got this.